Hello, everyone, and welcome. I think there's still says like some 50 some guests in the waiting room, so we'll keep letting people in here. Thanks for joining us today. We have a pretty exciting topic. It is the 2026 e-commerce squeeze is what I'm calling it. I actually, unfortunately, think there's going to be overall a squeeze, but I'm going to try to remain somewhat optimistic about it. I like to think of myself as an optimistic risk taker, as a realist. So if some of the things that I say seem a bit downbeat to you, listen, I think we can get through this. It's just a very interesting and challenging time ahead, particularly here in Europe, in my opinion. I guess we have some people joining globally. We'll refer to Europe a lot. A lot of this is also relevant to other markets, though. So I'm going to look at this question of, has stagflation hit Google Ads, and what else is going on in Google Ads now, next, later? Just a word about me. I am your humble speaker of the day. My name is Mike. Please, we're on first name basis. I've been working in retail for a long time, and at this point, I've been working in e-commerce and advertising for even longer. I've been doing that for just about 10 years here with Smarter E-commerce. I've also done product management. I do a lot of data visualization, analysis, and I'm just overall a big nerd. I also like to help, so that's what I'm going to try to do today. I'm here to help. And I also talk frequently with journalists from around the world about some of the things we'll be talking about today. I talk about the role of China in e-commerce. I talk about advertising, the way these campaign technology work. That's the type of thing that I also talk about with our clients day to day. I work for Smarter E-commerce, and you'll learn a little bit more about us again at the end. But we're very proud to now be 18 years old. We're legal adults in terms of our company history. And again, I've been with the company for about 10 of those 18 years only, but it's an honor to stand on the back of all the work that everyone at the company does together. I'm just a humble spokesperson, but there's so many smart people at the company. I think that's what makes us special and extraordinary. We're just from a little town in Linz, but we've managed to make an impact worldwide in advertising, and I think that's just through our culture of excellence that we really strive for. So let's jump into the agenda and get into it. Guess what? We can already check off one thing about us. That's done. So we can now get into the fun stuff. We're going to look at 3 macro indicators that I'm watching right now to zoom out of advertising, even out of e-commerce, and look at the bigger world for a second. Then we're going to talk about the Eastern incursion, which I'm referring here to the wide range of China and China-related e-commerce activity and retail activity that is coming into Europe at the moment. Then we'll look at, as promised, what I'll call stagflation in ads, and get into a little bit about what's happening with shopping and PMax, and we'll even talk a bit about AI Max for shopping. I know that wasn't on the agenda on the website, but it's new. Things change fast, and I thought, let's keep this as relevant to you as possible. And that will take us into the AI variable. And then we'll wrap it up just so that this is not too gloomy or anything like that with what you can do in the situation that we're facing. By the way, I see there's now over 100 of us in here. That's really great. That's cozy. Thank you for being here. I want to invite you to use the Q&A. I won't tackle those questions till the end, but that's usually a favorite feature. So I enjoy it too, hearing what you have to, what you're facing, what you think, what questions you have, and doing my best to answer those. So please make liberal use of the Q&A, and we'll cover as many of them as we can at the end. This will last about an hour. I've got like 40 slides or so. I don't know. I don't like rehearse these things excessively ahead. I'll try to keep it in time so there's room for questions at the end. All right, so 3 macro indicators. Let's get into the meat here. The first one, this probably won't come as a shock to anyone, but energy inflation is skyrocketing due to the geopolitical situation, the war with Iran, the Strait of Hormuz being closed, and all this stuff. Um, so right now, the latest data came out for Europe in April. Actually, at the time I pulled this data, it was still like a flash data. So I think the final number is like 10.9% energy inflation in the month of April, which is horrible, goes without saying. But unfortunately, if this situation persists, this is of course going to cause all prices to increase. Right now, they already are. We crossed, I think, 3% again, or we're at 3% for the first time in a while here in Europe. And this of course affects. It cuts through the entire supply chain. It cuts into transport costs. It cuts into packaging. So even your local produce or something, things might be wrapped in plastic or things like that. It just will affect everything on a long enough time range. And I certainly hope that we don't get into another inflation cycle like we had in 2022. That still feels to me like yesterday. I'm not over it yet. I still complain about it. I still go to the grocery store and feel like everything looks too expensive. So I don't want to repeat that. Another thing that's happening, I first became aware of this actually through like a gaming podcast I listen to. I don't have time to play video games anymore, so sometimes I throw in a podcast to stay in touch. But gamers were complaining about the insane increases in RAM prices. And what we're looking at right here, this is a funny chart, but this is data coming via Keepa. It's no affiliation. It's just a cool website where you can track Amazon prices. And this is the best selling RAM chip on Amazon Germany. It's like the Corsair Vengeance something. I'm not into that stuff, but you can see that RAM prices increased over 250% in a few short months, and they've relaxed a bit, but it's an extremely tense situation. I'm just gonna this chart might look weird to you because there's these squiggly lines where it runs together. That's just showing you that there's extreme volatility still happening pretty recently, even early into this month, where the price can fluctuate up or down by 100 euros in a day. It's just going up, down, up, down. And so this situation is a bit relaxed from the peak, but it is not stable by any means. And if you don't know why we're talking about this, it's because, well, first off, the RAM prices are going up because silicon is selling at a premium right now due to the AI companies, the superscalers, the big tech companies, all getting as much silicon as they can for compute, for training and running these AI models. It is leading to a shortage of silicon worldwide, and that's what's causing this. And why that matters is, besides energy prices increasing, silicon is increasing as well. And the day and age that we live in, there is RAM in everything. If it has a screen, if it has more than one button, there's RAM in there. If it has a Wi-Fi connection, there's RAM in there. It's just silicon was so cheap for a while that it actually became cheaper to just use things with RAM built into them than not. And now the situation has changed. So this again will hit electronics, toys, all kinds of things you wouldn't even expect. Also, of course, devices, cars, everything. But it's, again, RAM is heavily embedded in the supply chain. It's one of those things that, combined with energy prices, is very likely to lead to wider scale inflation over the course of the year. And yeah, this is, again, very fresh data right from April. You can see that consumer confidence in Europe has started falling off a cliff again. So, this was like the Eurozone crisis back in 2012, 2013 was the depths of the Eurozone crisis. And then that's when the zero interest rates policy lasted for about a decade. Of course, consumer confidence crashed again due to the pandemic. And then consumer confidence crashed again due to the inflation crisis I just mentioned back in 2022. um, and the end of the zero interest rate policy. So we've been slowly climbing our way back out below average, and now all this stuff is happening again. And confidence, we're in probably our third consumer confidence crisis of the decade. So these are all very negative macroeconomic signs that point to manufacturing becoming more expensive due to RAM shortages and energy price shortages, or energy price increases rather. And consumers are super shaky about this already. So we have to watch ahead, because that of course can affect people's wallets and how much they spend. And this is going to be relevant to all of us in e-commerce, or any business really. And besides that, those economic things, there's something else that I've been watching for a while now. Some people gave me the nickname the Temu guy, because I became a little famous as a Temu watcher. But Temu is not alone. This is what I call the Eastern Incursion. And what I've done, I think word clouds are a little cheesy, to be honest. I always am like, word cloud, but sometimes they're effective as a visualization. So what I've done is taken all these dozens of Chinese e-commerce competitors who are spending money on Google Ads, and based on how often they're showing up in the auctions, that's the size of them here on screen. And so you can see that Temu and Shein, they're spending tons of money in Google Ads. AliExpress, there's no surprise, but there might be ones that you haven't heard of, like this one. I don't even know how to say it. Vevor, if you wanted to say a German type pronunciation. I have no idea how they want that to be said, but they are massive in home and garden and do it yourself right now. They are like the Shein of that branch right now, and they're spending tons of cash on Google Ads and Google Shopping. I only found out about them because I was looking for a rake, and I love looking at Google Shopping ads when I'm shopping, and everything was Vevor. It's like, what is this place? But there's all kinds of business models in here. Like, some people might get upset at me for saying Frugo or Joom, because these are, strictly speaking, not China-based companies, but they're China dropshippers. Their business model to me is very equivalent to like Wish.com. And we also see what I think is perhaps most interesting of all, some really fascinating strategies by Chinese players like Moravia here. I was just talking on our podcast a couple of weeks ago, Growing E-commerce, that Spain, in my view, they don't really have a big native marketplace, or like a local marketplace, the way there's Zalando in Germany, which has gone across Europe, and there's Allegro in Poland, and there's Bol.com in Netherlands, and so on. And Spain is a big market that kind of doesn't have a big homegrown marketplace. But now there's a new one popping up, Moravia, except it's not actually homegrown. It's owned by, if I'm not mistaken, by Alibaba. Alibaba has also taken a Turkish marketplace called Trendyol and started massively scaling them in Eastern Europe. They're causing huge problems in Google Shopping auctions in Eastern Europe. So there's just any number of business models coming over from the East into Europe. And what they're trying to do is solve their own marketplace woes. You know, they've become a bit involuted in China. The market growth has been too inwardly focused, and so they're looking for green pastures. And there's one I want to talk about here especially. It's a company called Joybuy. If you haven't heard about Joybuy yet, you certainly will over the course of this year. So Joybuy is the e-commerce platform of JD, and they have recently been super active in Europe. They purchased a company called Seconomy, which owns MediaMarkt, for example, the market leader in electronics, and they've also launched the Joybuy platform. So when I first started seeing Joybuy in Google Shopping auctions, I was like, oh boy, here we go again, because they started out within days at a level that reminded me of when Temu launched their advertising in Europe. But it didn't continue that way. They, in their first month alive here in Europe, they were showing up as an account level competitor for about 10% of advertisers. Whereas Temu, you can see they massively scale their advertising into a whole other universe. But Joybuy, for right now, they're not going to be the huge auction competitor that you need to be fearful of. This could change at any time. They could decide they want to spend a lot more on Google. But I think ultimately they're even more concerning than that. And it's because they don't need to spend money on advertising the way that Temu did. They have a real value proposition. No offense to Temu. I'm showing you here a product I selected from their UK website. They're right now live in the UK, Germany, France, Benelux. Those are the markets that they've chosen to launch. And what's interesting about this is that it's a real brand. It's an Apple tablet is there on Joybuy. The price is rock bottom. It's matching the best price for this product on Amazon. And actually, they have their own little version of Amazon Prime called Joy Plus. And you can get it $50 cheaper on Joybuy than you can on Amazon. They have the lowest price for that product on the market. And you earn loyalty points too. And to kind of put the icing on the cake, they have same-day delivery. You can order that before noon and you'll have it the same day. So this is not Temu, where Temu's proposition was just having the lowest prices. You wait for it. They have the low prices of Temu. They have the real brands of Amazon, and they have the extremely fast shipping of Amazon. So that's why I say they don't need advertising, because this is a company that has a very strong value proposition, and I think they're going to grow well organically through word of mouth and stuff like that. And I think with this Joy Plus program, they can do well at retaining customers as well through these loyalty points and special discounts. Hold on, before I proceed, I think there's one more thing I want to say about Joybuy. No, I can't remember. I lost my thought. But oh yeah, I'm sorry, it's right here at the top. Our competitors are everyone. This quote comes from the boss, or I guess he's like the CEO of Joybuy UK. I don't know exactly what job title is, but he said our competitors are everyone. And the other thing that he said in this interview that really struck me is that they're taking on Amazon. They're not shy about it. They say this publicly. They are here to take on Amazon. And they said that there will be collateral damage among other retailers. And that's why I don't think their competitors are everyone. I think that Amazon is their competitor, and they will step on anyone's toes on the way to get to Amazon. So this is a company that makes me really nervous, to be honest. Now, just to give another last view on this topic before we move on. This chart might be a little hard to read. I'm not sure how big it displays. Depends how big your monitor is, I guess. But don't worry about it. Let's talk through what this is. This shows basically the digital penetration of Temu and Amazon, like in each of these European markets. The white bars are Amazon, the yellow bars are Temu. And so you can see that, and it's, by the way, sorted from left to right by GDP, the largest economies in Europe. So you see that these very large economies over here, they're the more Western economies. And Amazon has a much higher share than Temu in those, although Temu share is respectable, or their digital penetration. But meanwhile, there's other markets like Hungary jumps out here, but a lot of Central European markets and the smaller GDP markets where Temu has a much higher digital penetration than Amazon does, and these yellow bars are way higher. And what it seems to me is going on here, where we are here in Europe, we've got these Western giants like Amazon moving east and coming into Europe. And we have these Eastern giants like Temu and JD and Alibaba who are moving west and coming into Europe. And we are getting this big, warm, fuzzy hug from mom and dad, except actually it's Amazon and Temu and Joybuy and whoever else. So that's the situation. Europe is just on the menu from my perspective. It feels to me too asymmetrical. This is what frustrates me about it. But I think that means that we all need to work on our offers, our value propositions, because you see the standard that is being set in terms of price, shipping, speed, and fulfillment. Okay. So after that very cheerful news, let's talk about stagflation in ads. I'm not actually an economist, and probably someone who is an economist would say that's not stagflation, but I think it illustrates a point. Stagflation is this uncomfortable situation where an economy is struggling to grow and prices are increasing. And that's uncomfortable because the measures that you would usually do to tackle stalled growth are counterproductive for inflation, and the measures you would use to tackle inflation are counterproductive for growth. So it creates an uncomfortable situation, a squeeze, basically. And what we see in CPCs in Google Ads is that they're increasing. I'm going to show you even a longer historical view on the next slide. But I want to quickly highlight, you can get access to this data and a whole lot more, including competition insights on some of these large marketplaces that we just talked about over at this QR code here. If you scan it, if you're watching on your laptop, or otherwise, just go on Google and type in smec Market Observer or smec Google Ads benchmarks, and you'll find it. Okay, Google search is still here. I still love it. It still works. But what I think is quite striking here is that we've seen shopping CPCs increasing the most. They're increasing faster than PMAX CPCs, which are actually slightly flat in this view. And I want to talk about why that is and what might happen next. But zooming out, this is a long-term view of both PMAX and shopping CPCs. I threw them into one bin here, and it goes back to 2019. You'll see that, even back then, CPCs rising is a story as old as time. They were rising. There was this CPC recession. They dropped off a cliff due to the COVID pandemic, lockdowns and everything. And that's because suddenly there were a lot more users online. So there were more ad impressions to buy, and it worked out pretty well, actually. And then they have ever since continued on their upward rise, where Q4 of last year was a historic high for CPCs. This is when the topic really came to my awareness in particular, because I used to look at CPCs more often, these benchmarks and stuff like that. I hadn't looked at them so much in a while, but in Q4, it got so expensive and it was just getting painful. And the thing is that what we're seeing right now in Q1 is actually higher than all of last year or the year before. It's higher even than the holiday CPCs in 2023. So that's not a great situation. It's just an expensive time to buy ads right now. I just want to say one more word about these CPCs. You see right now we're at a benchmark or a median CPC of 40 cents. And just as a reminder, of course, there are some businesses that pay way, way, way more than that per click, and others that pay less than that. But what's important here is the movement. So also, if you go and check out smec Market Observer, which I really encourage you to do, sometimes we show the absolute values in there, the click-through rate, the conversion rate. But remember, there's always a range. It shouldn't be something where you say, oh, I'm above or below that number that's on their website. That's good or bad. It's more about giving you an indication of what is the level and helping you see where the trend is headed, how it's developing. So here's where the other shoe drops. Prices are going up. That's the inflation part of stagflation. And unfortunately, impressions are way down last year. This is the second half of, about actually it's the last 1 year of data here. We can see that both PMax and shopping impressions are down. Recently, they've been down as much as 15, 20%, and even last month as low as 25% year over year. And you have to remember that's they were already in April of last year, they were also not great. So it's down even further from that. So this is not a great dynamic because everything else comes from impressions. It is, these are the eyeballs. This is the inventory, the ad inventory that ultimately gets sold. And spend levels are pretty flat. Impressions are going down, and that's what drives CPCs up. Now, in Google's defense, smart bidding works pretty well, and we'll show more again about that later. So they're working hard to manage the situation. But at a certain point, something has to give. And I'm concerned that 2026 can or will be that year, considering everything else that's going on right now. Something else important is going on here. I want to now talk about the relationship about PMax and shopping for a second. And some of the, in case you join our webinars more often, you might have seen 1 or 2 of these slides before, but there's new stuff coming as well, don't worry. But I think it's increasingly relevant also because there's this new technology coming out called AI Max for shopping. Last year, Google launched AI Max for search. And my belief, I'm not a Google VP, I'm not a Google global product manager or anything like that. But my belief is that this has to do with this chart right here. I don't think we're unique in seeing this outcome, that Performance Max reached a certain adoption level basically a year after it went live. Most of this adoption came through the migration of smart shopping campaigns to PMax back then. And a lot more came from all these, this is a bit in the weeds, but all these search ad 360 campaigns that it took them longer for search ad 360 migration to happen. So a lot of that growth just happened through smart shopping campaigns being migrated to PMax. And since then, PMax hasn't really moved a lot. It's even started to slip down a bit. And shopping seems like it's becoming a bit more popular again. Probably 18 months ago, Google changed the way that PMax and shopping interact with each other so that PMax no longer squashes shopping. And that's also feeding into this. So shopping's having a bit of a comeback, a bit of a revival, and that's okay. What I think Google has recognized, because it's a similar story with, if you look at like search and stuff like that, PMax was also taking a share of search by taking over, it was creating some DSA ads and some RSA ads and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I think Google realized that there's a certain percent of the market, and it's a pretty big percent, like in this case, 25%, 1 in 4, or at least 1 in 4 euros, dollars, pounds, that's just going to stay in shopping. It's not coming to PMax anytime soon. And they've done they've been doing an awesome job with PMax. They've released so many reports, so many new controls. I think they've done a wonderful job with PMax, and that number doesn't move. So that's what I think is behind new stuff like AI Max for shopping and AI Max for search. They've said, well, if we can't bring those people to PMax, and if they would, there would be a mutiny if they would migrate these beloved campaigns like shopping and search to PMax. What if we bring the PMax features to search and shopping? That's what AI Max for search and shopping are all about. Let's just skip over this one in the interest of time. This is just showing that more and more people are running PMax and shopping in parallel. But getting back to the CPC topic, because you might be wondering where I'm headed with this. Something that I noticed late last year is that, and it could in part account for what's going on, is that PMax CPCs are higher than shopping CPCs. We'll look at that again a bit more in a second, but like this is the the common range of CPCs for PMAX right here. And this is the common range of CPCs for shopping. It's lower, right? But when shopping is run next to PMAX, like in an account, when they're run side by side in an account, the floor doesn't move that much, but the ceiling does. So CPCs start to get more expensive in shopping. And if you look at what happens to PMAX CPCs, when they're run in the same account as shopping campaigns, the ceiling comes down a little bit, but the floor doesn't come down, and it stays pretty much similar to PMAX CPCs. And so I have the impression that having these campaigns run in parallel next to each other is one of the reasons why, and we know that trend is increasing. I've shown you here, that trend has really been increasing. That could be a reason why shopping CPCs have started to get more expensive. Now there's a lot, I don't know exactly why PMAX cost per click is higher than shopping. Let's look at this for a second, okay? Because there's a lot of stuff inside of PMAX that's not shopping. This is a view of everything in PMAX that is not search network, all the other networks, Gmail, Discover, Maps, etc. And you can see that there's a ton of YouTube in there. There's quite a bit of display, etc. As I mentioned, Google's been doing a great job with PMAX, and they've been adding transparency and stuff like that. So now that we can see stuff like this, I can tell you what's inside of there. But that's all good and well, but it's still the case that most of the costs from PMAX seem to come from shopping and text ads. So back when I presented this late last year in a different webinar, I actually presented this once before, and I said, this is a preliminary finding. More research is required. I'm very slow, but I'm true to my word. And so I've started looking at it a little bit more. But since we can now see what's inside of PMAX, we can also see the performance of what's inside of PMAX. And so what I found is that, yeah, PMAX CPCs are higher than shopping. That's not news. We talked about that. One of the big reasons why is because text ad CPCs seem to be higher, and there's a decent amount of text ad or search ad volume inside of PMAX. Other stuff in there is cheaper. But also, shopping inside of PMAX is more expensive than shopping itself. I don't know why that is exactly. And I don't want people to say, I knew it. I knew it. Shopping inside of PMAX is a scam. It's designed to make cost per click more expensive. I'm not here to arbitrate that for the market, or I'll need more research before I feel comfortable making a statement like that. What I would say is that it's worth looking into. You have this kind of data available to you now. You can check this stuff out now. And if you don't know how to do it, reach out to me and I can help you do that. I can teach you how to do that. It's fine. But again, as I said earlier, smart bidding doesn't suck. Smart bidding is pretty good, okay? So it might be fine that CPCs are higher. What you always have to check out is what's going on with your value per click. And just because I really try to be fair to Google, and I'm not trying to demonize anything that's going on here, I'm just trying to understand it. And this data I published a while back, and but I really like to drag it out once and again and remind people because I think it's important. And what this shows us is that, like on the horizontal axis here, we have cost per click increasing to some extremely high ones that cost hundreds of euros. And then on the vertical axis, we have the value per click. And especially when we look at the interquartile range, this is the most common range of values, we find that there's an extremely linear relationship. So Google is bidding higher and getting you a higher cost per click. Excuse me, a higher value per click. And actually, if we look at the outliers, there's like a group of outliers here, there's another cluster of outliers here. the outliers are actually usually pretty favorable. They're kind of like jackpots that pay off pretty well for you. So I don't think we should be allergic to or afraid of high CPCs, but of course we need to look at what's happening at the value per click. And of course, it's also great if we measure better things with that value per click. That could be a revenue per click, could also be a profit per click. The AI variable. So this is this new chapter that we're all embarking on together. And I have the feeling right now, you can call this GEO, AEO, whatever you like. So generative engine optimization or answer engine optimization. This is this new version of SEO that is emerging where people are trying to appear organically and get cited by AI and get clicks, maybe. And it's mostly, these are mostly zero click environments. They're not click optimized. And what I observe right now is that as soon as it has the word AI in it or agentic or anything, your typical e-commerce merchant or online shop is very interested, and perhaps at the expense of search engine marketing, paid ads. And I don't think that this is the right posture, and I'll explain why. It's certainly not going to solve the problems that we're in right now. I think the basic premise of this new, this is how the funnel is supposed to look. This is in a very simplified high-level version, but there's this new AI discovery that's going on in AI mode, AI overviews, ChatGPT, and elsewhere. And, you know, there's this idea that this discovery, visibility there, this matters. It means that you're in the consideration set. You might get direct traffic from this. You might get click outs through being cited, whatever. But one way or the other, they're going to move through the funnel, however that's attributed, into a transaction. We know that this agentic topic, the future of shopping in AI mode with UCP, I'm going to do a whole webinar on UCP next month where we'll get into these kind of topics in way more detail. But a transaction in the future can happen there in the AI surface, like AI mode, or they might still visit your site. But this AI discovery should fuel those activities. And that sounds really nice. And right now, it reminds me of the old days of SEO where growth hacking worked really well. You could do these kind of cheap tactics and get outsized returns on them. But over time, Google has stabilized the algorithms in SEO, and they're shipping constant updates, and all that kind of hacking doesn't really work anymore. That will happen with AEO as well. But what's not going to change are two fundamental things. First off, upstream of all of this is your data feed. And you might, I think I'm not the only person saying this, that your data feed matters more than it ever did before. The information that you make available is extremely important right now. And what this does, it's going to support your organic discoverability, both in classic search engines and AI ones. And it's also going to support your ad visibility and your ad performance, which is this other little thing that no one really necessarily wants to talk about right now, or it seems a bit out of style, paid ads. So I don't want to say you shouldn't focus on AEO or stuff like this, but I have the impression right now, this happens in a lot of calls, that people, it's at the top of their roadmap. They're super focused on it. It's good. You can establish a baseline like that, just like you establish a mid to long-term baseline with your organic visibility. There's something to do there. There's a job to do. But at the end of the day, the thing that you can scale up or scale down, the thing that you can run promotions on, the thing where you have the most control and measurability will be ads. And there will be people who didn't do their homework here and they're just going to buy here. There'll be the Temus who will just flood the zone here. So we're going to end up repeating the structure that exists now. There's this whole SEO layer, and then there's ads. And this exact same structure is going to be existing in the new funnel. So cannot forget about maintaining our feed quality, improving it to the best level it's ever been, and the fact that ads will be coming to these surfaces very soon. Because this is, listen, I talked about the impressions dropping. I don't know if that's because of these new AI surfaces. It's a hypothesis. But if that's true, then perhaps these impressions are existing somewhere else and we'll have more access to those in the future. Maybe it's a measurability issue because Google Ads is less present there. Google Ads is not isn't reporting that data in a segmented way yet. Maybe we'll learn more in the future and see that the impressions are not going away, they're just moving somewhere else. Because Google says that query volumes are up. But in order to succeed here, there is an important paradigm shift. This is your classic relevance triangle for your quality score, how your ads are going to succeed in a classic search engine result page. Google wants to make sure that there is relevance between your keyword and your landing page and your ad copy, that all these things support each other, because that should result in a good user experience. And that's very important to them. They don't want to spam their search engine result page with your crappy ads. That's not what they want to do. In AI surfaces, because those users will never come back, in AI surfaces, there's a very new important piece of the puzzle, and that is AI content. Because the base assumption here is that queries are turning to prompts in many cases, which can be way longer, or not just prompts, but a sequential series of queries and prompts, a chat, a conversation with an AI, and that this can get super specific. So there's a challenge about how to meet such a specific context with potentially generic ad assets that are too generic. So, and then of course the landing page and the ad, those are all there. And we're going to come back to this configuration in a second, but it's significantly more complicated than it was. So there are two main ways to deal with this. One of them are conversational attributes, and this is only in beta in the US right now. It's not available to us here in Europe, but it will be. And Google has called this dozens of new data attributes. Fascinating. I mean, dozens, that's a lot, because there's already a lot in the feed. And they say that it's designed to enhance your discovery in these AI surfaces. So what I notice is that is going to be very relevant to kind of, yeah, this part, like having a good ad, actually it feeds into everything. They need to be able to match your product to that specific context. And so they need more attributes to do that. This is like the grounding data that helps ground the model, so it knows that your product is relevant and can be safely recommended. One thing that I have seen these attributes, but I can't talk about that in much more detail than that. Google will talk about it when they're ready. But one thing that at a very high level I think is fair to say is that Google is working on closing a lot of gaps here. They want to close gaps with other competing feeds like Meta and OpenAI. And of course, they want to introduce new ones as well. But prioritizing and sequencing are going to be very important here. And this gets back again to the distracted boyfriend meme. I think it's really important to decide, first off, are the conversational attributes the thing I need to focus on? Hold on, I'm going to jump ahead of myself for a sec. Because your base attributes, your base feed needs to be in good shape too. So the question is, should I even work on conversational attributes, or is my feed just a mess right now? These things need to be sequenced. The other big area that we're going to learn a lot more about next week, I guess, at Google Marketing Live, I'm sure there's going to be no shortage of words said about AI Max for shopping campaigns. So this is not a new campaign type, just like AI Max for search campaigns was not a new campaign type. It is a new technology layer. And I don't have a better asset than this one again, after GML, there'll be all kinds of fancy graphics and logos and everything that we'll be able to show. But for right now, this is the best I have. But it's good anyway. There are these 3 core features inside of AI Max. That's text customization, final, which is new in the context of shopping, final URL expansion, which we know, and optimal format selection, which is a terrible name, but let's just explain these very quick because I don't, yeah, we're getting short on time here. But basically, if we look back at this, they want to make sure that the ad matches. There needs to be relevance to the landing page. And so they're tackling these things. They're making shopping more ready for this kind of a situation here. Because text customization is your ad copy in shopping. It's your product title. They're going to make sure that it matches. That's one of the points we saw there. Final URL expansion, those are your landing pages, of course. And they're going to make sure that that is covered too. But there's one little thing that they need to do that, and that's they need to be able to serve text ads as well. So for someone who's using shopping but not PMax, this is probably going to be pretty important. But we'll learn more about that next week and beyond. I'll probably end up doing a whole webinar about that in a couple months, I bet. But let's close it up so we can get to Q&A. What can you do right now? Master your data. That's the feed excellence that I'm talking about. Your basic, your basic feed, your conversational attributes, when those come in a while, don't overreact yet. Wait, they'll be here. Okay, there's nothing you can do right now. The next thing I would say is feeding the AI, and this is also related to your data, but you need to be able to give things that the AI can't know otherwise about you and your business, and then controlling the outcome. So that's optimizing your outputs, and we'll explain those all quick. I think we've covered this. Your base attributes are foundational. Your conversational attributes are going to be what's next. The next thing is that AI, it's genius. It's incredibly good at so many things, but it's not actually strategic. It's a computer. It's very fast at calculating all these different things in the moment at auction time, but it doesn't know what matters to you or why ultimately. It's just pursuing a high-level goal like revenue growth. But you can get way more granular than that. And I think that's going to be important to standing out now, because I feel that this is all going to come down to profitability, this huge squeeze that we're talking about, where there's macro forces we don't like. There are incredibly powerful and sometimes compelling competitors coming from China and beyond. And there's this whole new AI layer that is shaking everything up. It's all very confusing at the moment, right? As well as the channel dynamics we talked about. So now I feel that it's the moment to favor discipline over dogma. You need to be open to flexibility, testing, new configurations. But the most important thing that I think you can do, something I've been recommending for a long time, and that is to bring things about your business that Google doesn't know, Google can't know, and manifest them in your campaigns. So things like your price attractiveness, your basket data, like what things are in your cart, what are bought together, your detailed inventory and stock and sell-through metrics and things like that. And then you can reflect these to the AI through your campaign structure, your budget, and your targets. And this is the way that you can help AI focus on the products where you can compete, where you have a USP, where you stand out in this crazy environment that's possibly recessionary. We don't know. And then there's the output optimization. This comes down to testing, measuring better. What are you measuring? Again, are you measuring revenue per click or profit per click? How do you validate your incrementality? Are you using Meridian and Google's new solutions here? Are you using cool tools they have like FeedX to help you test changes to your feed, which we've just been saying are so important right now? There's all kinds of ways of measuring, testing, and learning. That's going to be very important. I want to switch to Q&A now, so I'll leave this playbook for later. And I'll just say as a quick plug or shout out to ourselves that we have built a platform where we try to encode everything that we've just talked about. So integrating your data that matters, building segments so that this is ingestible by your campaign, and getting into all kinds of detailed measurement so that you can learn and adapt faster. But having said that, if you want to learn more about that, reach out to me. If you have other questions that you don't want to ask right now, reach out to me. But let's get into the Q&A because I went a little long. Hold on, I'm just going to stop presenting my screen. Wait, no, I need to find my Q&A. Here we go, Q&A tab. How likely is it that we can attribute these hold on, there are upvotes. That's very cool. Let's sort by popular, okay? That's one of the reasons we wanted to do this. Oh, that is the most popular one, great. How likely is it that we can attribute these macroeconomic factors to rising CPC costs before we analyze our Google Ads campaigns? Are we seeing bigger CPC increases across different campaign types? So yeah, I do believe that there are some platform effects going on here, which could explain why CPCs for shopping in particular rose. And so that's something about what's happening with the ad platform. But I also believe that there are macroeconomic effects. And when I look at the impressions being down and the competition being so tense, it's only natural that CPCs will increase. But yeah, I mean, I think you can run a correlation analysis between consumer confidence, for example, and your ad costs or your conversion rates. There's all kinds of stuff. Back in the days, I used to correlate lockdown measures that were taken in COVID with conversion rate, and you could see these correlations emerge. So I think it's quite possible. Has Microsoft Ads seen the same rise in CPC increases? That's a great question, Ben. I don't know off the top of my head. I'll have to follow up with you on that. It's a really good question. Let's see. How can ChatGPT access my feed in Merchant Center? Well, it can't, but as I mentioned that Google seems to me to be closing gaps with other feeds. I think if AI puts new attributes in their feed, it's in Google's interest to say, hey, we should absorb that same attribute because it has a couple of things. That way, our feed remains the kind of single source of truth. If you maintain a good Google feed, then you should cover all the other feeds. And if someone is investing the time to populate attributes in someone else's feed, like OpenAI or Meta, then we should benefit from that time that they invested. That will inform our algorithm too, if we have all that data. But you have to go through ChatGPT's, you have to submit a feed to ChatGPT. They don't have direct access to your Merchant Center. But I think if you have a solid Google Shopping feed, you're well on the way to having a good OpenAI feed. There's a lot of overlap. Do you think not using AI Max now will result in being disadvantaged in the future? How is it possible to control AI Max outcome now that it is still fresh and in a learning phase? Yeah, I mean, I think the most compelling feature from AI Max from today's perspective, it's so early, but it's that text customization where Google's going to use AI to rewrite your titles. Having titles relevant to the query has been a challenge for a long time. It's something people are testing and finding strategies for, but we know that it correlates to a better click-through rate and better performance. So I think they will have an advantage because their titles are going to be better than yours. That's what I think. And regarding serving text ads out of the shopping campaign, I don't know about that yet. But how is it possible to control AI Max outcome now that it's fresh and in a learning phase? Well, I think you can influence the outcome of any campaign from day one by giving it better signals. So I'm not too worried about that. But AI Max is still in a beta. Let's see how aggressive they are on the timeline. I think they'll be pretty aggressive. We'll see when we all get access to it. Is there any concern with the amount of overlap between campaign types? For example, running text ads within search campaigns, PMax, and now possibly within shopping AI Max. Yes, I'm super concerned about that, and I think about it all the time. And I don't mean that sarcastically. I really mean it. I wrote a whole white paper about AI Max for search where I talk about this issue. Um, I, and Google. That's why Google is getting rid of DSA. There was too much redundancy in place there. There was too much overlap. So that's why they're doing that. But let's see how Google positions AI Max for shopping. I don't think that Google's goal is that you're using AI Max for search and PMax and AI Max for shopping. I think they want to take the people who aren't using PMax and get them to use AI Max for search and AI Max for shopping. I think they see that those will be the main people who benefit, but it's confusing, and Google has a lot of education to do on the market, because they make a big press release saying there's AI Max for shopping, and how does a PMax user know if they are or are not supposed to use that without specific guidance from Google? So I think that's something that they're going to have to really flesh out a lot. Hold on, let me just sort by who was first. Yeah, we have time for maybe one more question if anyone wants to ask one. Otherwise, I'll give you back a couple minutes of your time. No. Oh. Someone said there's only 4 people on the call. That's not true. There are, but it's ending now. People are dropping out, but there's still over 70. Thank you for raising the concern, though. But all right, thanks everyone very much for your time. It's been great. Stay in touch.